And I'm Josh, and welcome to J&J DBA Insights. Absorb the knowledge.
All right, today with us we have Mr. Andrew Scavage. Rowan is his first name. He's worked with the command and control systems for aerospace companies, submarine training systems, and flight simulations. He's currently is responsible for distributed system automations at a telecommunications company, and he's working on his doctoral dissertation in the UMGC DBA program. His dissertation is titled Strategic Collaboration for Open Innovation Among Global High-Tech SMEs. A couple random achievements. He has two martial arts third-degree black belts, impressive. And he's submitted Mount Rainier in Washington. Is that Washington, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay, and most notably, though,
I always
I
wanted
thought
to do.
was the best thing was you can boast that you had the longest distance in the New York City's paper airplane competition, which is amazing to me. We could have a whole nother
No,
podcast.
it wasn't anywhere close to the world record, but
Oh,
yeah, it was a fun little art project.
I think that was cool. But okay. Anyway, about your dissertation and your research, can you give us like maybe a 1 to 2 minute elevator pitch?
Oh, right, yeah, sure thing. Dr. J and Dr. J, and congratulations on your successful defense not too long ago. Certainly. Right now, I'm working in telecom engineering, and we do a lot of outreach to other companies. So that's why I chose a research topic of open innovation. And that led to my research question, which was what's the role of strategic collaboration in the adoption of open innovation? And we have to really focus in on a topic. So the focus was on small and medium enterprise, particularly in the global high-tech industry. So to investigate that, first we had to problematize what the issue was. And a lot of the current research into open innovation, despite being around for a good 20 years now, it's had limited use in small and medium enterprise. And small and medium enterprise would be particularly effective at it because since they're smaller, they have less inertia, they can be more agile. Sorry, you need to find some, can we pause for a moment? Garner is here for this plant behind me. Nice to see you. Oh, I guess the AI edits the plant out, so you can't even enjoy it. But
Right, kind of cut it out there. But okay, well, as per your research, how are you tying in the strategic collaboration with the open innovation, which is that rapidly changing process?
Yeah, so that's an interesting part, and the part that I wasn't as familiar with. So that I'm finding that very educational, and the strategic collaboration is a big part of my theoretical perspective that I picked up from actually it's a local engineer from Boeing who goes to University of Washington, who took the original stakeholder theory, which was developed into instrumental stakeholder theory with Goodpaster back in 1991. And yeah, the current iteration from 2018 pretty much brings a lot of like practical use cases and how do you build good relationships with collaborators. And what I find most interesting in the open innovation research was a lot of their findings were that they're trying to use open innovation to work with other companies and develop really cool new products and processes that increase their efficiency or even like create entirely new markets that they can commercialize. But it wasn't like the output product that was important. What was like the real strategic asset for a company was this relationship that they're building with their other partners, whether they're vendors or customers or even like government stakeholders. That was a real strength. And with open innovation, that almost kind of comes as an afterthought. All the papers were like, yeah, we got all these cool things, but what was important was the friends we made along the way. But yeah, the difficulty is that was not the focus of open innovation. And whereas with instrumental stakeholder theory, yeah, the focus is 100% on building that relationship first, and then anything you get out of it is kind of bonus.
Right. Isn't the descriptive stakeholder theory, I believe, was the one that focused
Yes.
on the relationship part of the stakeholder theory, right?
Then there's a third component that they
pressed
usually the
for the
normative.
years, right? And it went from normative, which was, I think it started in the 80s with Freeman. That was the normative one, and then it went descriptive, and then instrumental, and now we're kind of in this new space where the rapid innovation of companies and different industries are pushing our current theory of stakeholder theory, or our current knowledge of stakeholder theory, and making it kind of a new thing, right?
Yeah, and the folks behind instrumental stakeholder theory almost kind of consider it a bridge. Because yeah, there's a big theoretical argument between, I guess, the Friedman economists and the new stakeholder theory folks. It's like, it's not ethical to like listen to everyone when you're really responsible to your shareholders. So why are you even giving these other stakeholders the time of day if they're not even direct customers or anything? And the way they kind of got around that is like, you do want to pay attention to these people because they can impact your corporation, even if they're just like protesters or something. You still want to
image,
or manage them strategically. So certainly you want, and that's kind of where the instrumental stakeholder theory comes in. It's like, you're not taking directions from them, but since they do have some form of power, you need to take them into account in your planning.
Right.
And yeah, I think that's where the strategic part of the collaboration comes in.
So I know you've got some preliminary findings and analysis conducted, right? So how do you see tying back into, some of the initial things you're seeing back into, the actual work that you're doing now, or do you see that, right? I know, right? There's a lot of work that goes into developing the research question, and things change, but how do you see you're starting to see how you can actually apply this back into a practitioner setting?
Right. Yeah. Thanks, Joshua. Um, yeah. So where I work now, we do kind of practice a lot of it. Our open innovation department it's another department, so that helps me avoid, I guess, bias because it's not something I'm directly working with, or at least that's my argument. But where it comes in handy is this has been really great for me to understand like where a lot of these small businesses come from, especially ones that either going to be our customers or suppliers. They come into our space and like we're trying to provide all these resources to kind of help them enter a market, like use some of our technology incorporated in, and they're always kind of suspicious of us. Because they're a business, they expect us to kind of be motivated by wanting to make money, and so they come in with some suspicion on like, why are you helping us with this? Are you here to like find our technology and steal our intellectual property or something like that?
Right.
So a lot of what this helps with their perspective is when I'm dealing with them is like, oh yeah, totally. Our goal is to build a market. If people buy your product and need our service, then we make money off of the service. And just when it comes to things like, I don't know, business altruism, it kind of brings up a lot of suspicion or mistrust. And this has kind of helped me lay it out on the table earlier on when dealing with folks that I guess are like more, I don't know, Friedman economics minded.
Right. Well, I mean,
But what is your goal here?
that's a real serious concept. People that want to collaborate, but
Yes.
especially an SME that maybe has something that nobody hasn't hit the market yet, they want to collaborate, but who can they trust? Really, building those relationships and connections are a big thing with trust. But before we get too far down the line, I wanted to know, like, what was your motivation for this research? And you kind of hit on it with your work and stuff like that, but was there any other specific motivations with maybe high-tech SMEs, right? Maybe you have a particular penchant for high-tech, or for me, maybe I'll restate this. I was really curious that you were, that you were guided down this path with so few research articles coming back from your data set. I thought that was amazing.
Right.
And I mean, you're very, very specific and very narrow in your scope, which is really good. But was there enough data out there? to do the systematic review on?
Yeah, and I guess that's always a risk. There were certainly a lot of articles early on when I was just looking at the research topics, and I kind of see our inclusion criteria and the search strings as a way of, I don't know, trying to automatically kind of bring down that scope.
Filter it down. Yeah,
And Dr. Shields worked with me really hard because yeah, originally I kind of wanted to be the broader. I wanted to kind of read everything and pull everything together, and she really encouraged me to like, no, just focus on a certain size of enterprise, a certain sector. And when it came down to it, I mean, I was impressed that I got as many. I thought 150 articles was actually pretty good. You know, even before like the manual screening for abstracts and
right.
content quality. But yeah, because I know some others get in like thousands of papers, and how do you really sift through all of that without putting in too much of your own biases. So I'm okay because the way I see the search string is it's more like a database query. It's like I sort of know what I want. Here's a paper that I've targeted, and with the search string, I can bring up all the other papers that use the same language as this paper, and then you kind of have a very filtered view of,
Right.
of particular research space.
Well, how many articles did you end up with in your final systematic review? The final date?
I have about 125 downloaded right now. I still have to go through and actually filter them and do the quality appraisal on them. So if I get to throw away 2 out of every 3, then then I'll be in good shape for systematic.
Yep.
Yeah, in-depth coding.
Well, that's good.
So yeah, looking forward to that part of the process, and yeah, that's where I'll get to use more of the new automated features of Atlas TI, like they have machine learning coding, auto coding now. That I guess will give you a good start.
You're actually on to coding right now. Is that correct?
Soon. I mean, I just
data
downloading it.
extraction.
I'm waiting for a couple more papers to come in from the library. And actually, it was kind of funny because they actually gave me the wrong paper a couple of days ago. It was like the one just before the one I had requested. But that serendipity, it was on like accelerators. And we actually have another work function here this week on our accelerator program. So it's very different, very similar to Open Innovation. It's more focused on startups than, I guess, other types of collaborations. But it was cool to just read up on that, what's relevant to what's going on right here in my company right now. So,
right.
Do you have an idea on how you're going to approach your coding though? Like an approach, deductive, inductive, or you come up with? Yeah, go ahead.
It certainly will start with inductive because I'm still relatively new to this field and just want to let the data talk for itself.
Cool.
That being a note on the inductive, deductive, I think because you always have to have those a priori codes first, right? The established ones that pretty much match your research question. But aside from those a priori codes, I thought, I mean, and establishing a priori codes is deductive in itself, pretty much, by definition. But the inductive, like you said, a lot of the inductive coding took place with me in Atlas TI, and it brought forth a totally different direction of which I had previously thought my findings were taking me. But yeah, totally, you'll have fun with finding what's actually out there in the research. That's surprising. It's always the unanticipated findings, right?
Yes. Yeah, you kind of go in with some assumptions, and you're just trying really hard to push those assumptions aside. And I think even some of the simpler analysis, like the simple word count of an article. If you do a word count of an article and you look at the top 20 or 40 terms, I mean, they're very different terms than what you would search for in your research question or CMO or PICO framework. Because what comes up in an abstract and the language that the authors actually use when they're talking about their topic is actually somewhat different. And so I feel like that's some other bias that ends up when you just do like a tech, the title abstract keyword search in a database. They've kind of cherry picked the words that they put in there, but the actual topic that they're exploring will be
right.
Well, that will be cleared by the lexicals.
Onto what was it? After data extraction, you're on to your what did you choose for your quality appraisal tool?
I like the mixed method assessment tool, and even though we're not doing like the IRR, the integrated reliability with another reviewer, I like the idea of having this very consistent, reliable tool.
Yeah, I think we both used MMAT. A little bit different on our grading approach, but definitely right. It helps keep you objective as the reader, right? Because it's like look for X, Y, Z, and then do this throughout. For this, obviously for this type of study design. But yeah, so I think that was popular throughout, as opposed to I feel like Sapupis, at least personally, I'd be too subjective. I need I need guidelines to help keep me in line, even knowing that there'll be still probably be a little bit of bias, right? I mean, that's part of the whole entire program is training your mind about that bias. To Pupus, I couldn't like the too subjective.
Yeah, there are too many ways, and I think that is something that Dr. Shields is kind of poking at me right now because I think Paul and L and some of the others say that you don't want to just rely on one appraisal tool. So you do want to use multiple tools, and I think Dr. Shields is trying to push me to
Really?
something else, yeah, to Coupas or even just the article summary that you make is a tool for doing appraisal.
I know
You
one of
kind
our
of formally defined.
colleagues used fit for purpose as well. Well, I think they combined Bozenash. There's a
Those
Bozenash
are
piece.
weight of evidence, right?
Yeah, weight of evidence. That's another one that right that stacks pretty well in conjunction with other using other appraisal tools.
Weight of evidence I found went pretty closely with MMAT. You can kind of get those kind of together. But I did about half of our articles with weight of evidence too, and I was getting a little bit of different discrepancies on. It didn't match quite with my MMAT ratings, but yeah, that's just how it works, right?
And I think that's another just surprising thing is the fun thing about standards is there's so many to choose from. So it's like
I've
everyone really
heard of
has
mixing
a
two
very unique
together.
methodology section.
I haven't heard of the mixing two standards together for the actual paper. I always
Yeah.
thought you choose one and you do everything by that standard. Putting two
And
standards
that's my expectation too. But yeah, it seems like a lot of the folks are
redundant.
coming up with kind of hybrid
But
methods.
with maybe with a limited data set, maybe having two in there to appraise it, really drag out the high key things in the selective articles. Maybe why they're recommending you to do that. But okay, I
Use
was
a little bit of every program. We did a lot of critical assessment in even like 810 with article summaries and
right. Well, here I just wanted to go in quick. Oh, I noticed that you tied after your preliminary findings, you tied in GDP a lot, and then the difference between GDP and per capita GDP. I didn't really understand why that was in there when you're talking about GDP per se. To maybe that was your. I was trying to connect why the GDP was important to strategic
right.
cooperation and open innovation.
Yeah, so I have a little bit to say about that, and I'm a little bit worried because this kind of goes off into, I don't know, uncharted methodology. But in 850, we had to make a rapid evidence assessment and submit it somewhere for publication. And like I did not get approved for publication, which I hear is normal. A lot of folks get their first submission denied. But it was with IEEE, and they did provide a lot of good feedback, which I think I hear is unique. But they were saying, like, the systematic review is interesting, but we really want you to put some data into it. That's the DBA 830 stuff where we're doing analytics and everything like that. So I was really trying to grasp for, okay, well, how can I bring public data sources in here to kind of reinforce or help interpret the data set? And especially since I was going after global enterprises, there are big differences between different countries. And just trying to how to articulate that. And that's where I kind of came across that World Bank data set that actually has a consistent way of reporting, high tech SMEs. And kind of the difference there, the difficulty there is, yeah, they'd have data on high tech and they'd have data on SMEs, and it's a little bit difficult to find data specific to high tech SMEs. And
right, that's what I was thinking. Yeah, I thought that would be very difficult. And then when you talk just GDP and then per capita GDP, you're just talking about the was that GDP per capita was high tech GDP per capita, or was that just countries
Yes.
per capita?
Yeah, high tech GDP per capita. And
Okay.
that's important because some of the findings, the preliminary findings in the scoping literature review was like when you're trying to find a partner to do open innovation with, you can get more innovative ideas if you go to actually foreign countries. So a lot of big companies will actually have like, Boeing has like a Madrid Research Center, and they do a lot of
Right.
their collaboration
Little
over there.
satellite sites and stuff like that.
Yeah, because if you just kind of collaborate locally in a regional cluster, which happens a lot just because of convenience, there tends to be a lot of groupthink, and everyone just kind of does the same thing. And hey, way out over there, over the pond, they have another way that's of solving a problem. So so the difficulty then becomes like, well, who are the most innovative economies? And if you just look at the straight GDP numbers, you see one thing, US, China, Germany are on top. But if you actually rebalance it by GDP per capita, as Falk was recommending, it's actually more predictive of their high tech
Like
output.
shows the innovation happening within the economy. No, okay, yeah, you explained it well. That really
Yeah, and this is interesting because in the data sets that I'm looking at, a lot of the folks will only look at their particular country or at best like a small region.
right.
It's hard to get economic data because the only people who are taking economic data are either your country or a couple of the big trade groups. And there are a ton of different trade groups, but they're not all inclusive. The one I'm looking at, the OECD, doesn't even include like Russia and China. Russia is probably not as important as it was a couple of years
Yeah,
ago
right.
now. China definitely is a big supplier, and how do you integrate your innovation systems with like, Chinese companies when you have a company that competes on the global market?
So you talk about, right, strategic collaboration, open innovation, and then there's this third component that I noticed, right, knowledge sharing, right? At least in looking at your conceptual framework. So how does that tie back into even some of the conversations we were just having, right? Like, how do you see that knowledge sharing being relevant to open innovation?
Yeah, that's cool, Josh. And I have a feeling that that stands up because knowledge sharing was probably a big big component of your framework as well. I've noticed in a lot of our dissertations, knowledge sharing is usually somewhere in the center of our conceptual frameworks. And yeah, the more you can make folks comfortable with sharing their knowledge or getting their knowledge, there's a whole like my original research topic that I was interested in was on boundary spanning and how to get knowledge through barriers. And the advisor has to go through. Okay, you've been invested in this topic for probably 4 years. It's time to like go explore
Yep.
something else. And I didn't stray too far with the topic of open innovation, probably because yeah, knowledge sharing is always at the center of that, and breaking through those barriers involves yeah, building the trust and cooperation as well. So that's kind of and it was just cool to come across the theoretical framework that kind of incorporated all that stuff. Oh, because a lot of other topics, they don't really delve into trust too much, and the trust is really foundational. And it really hasn't been since like I think some of our DBA 800 projects way at the beginning of the class where they even introduced us to papers that had the concept of like a trust model.
Yep.
And I just never spent a lot of time thinking about it until some of those early papers.
Well, is that the value?
Swift trust.
Is the trust and the cooperation and the overall knowledge sharing, is that the value that the strategic collaboration creates? Is that the outcome, or is that like part of the, for lack of a better term, variables? Is the value because the value goes up and down, or is it that's how it would be changing as the?
Yeah, that's something I've been struggling a lot with, and I think the best description was researching on the epistemological framework and the Pawson et al. 2004 that talk a lot about the realist synthesis and how it's useful for these types of systematic reviews because there's not really a direct correlation between all these concepts. It's very messy. There are a lot of feedback loops, and I don't remember what they call it, like backwash or something. But yeah, everything is kind of influencing everything else,
Yep.
and that's kind of what makes these types of studies complex and interesting. And we see this with a lot of the other papers in my cohort. We have something that we think is intervention, but this is kind of a suspicion that I'm already starting to pull together, that a lot of us are studying some interesting, maybe almost like a fad or like a new technology as an intervention. And we find that, 50% of the companies try to use it, only 10% were successful. And this happens over and over again, no matter whether they're studying like digital transformation or, AI or, the thing I'm studying. This intervention, it's not really doing a direct impact on like productivity or output, but it's rather like, but it does introduce some sort of selection bias in that the people who are doing it are more open-minded. Open-minded means you're more susceptible to knowledge sharing or more accepting of knowledge coming in from other places. So the ones who actually do it and are successful are the ones who are already kind of more agile, as opposed to just being like stuck in their ways.
So the outcome that you're totally looking for, I mean, let me rephrase this. That's not the biased way that you're looking for it, but
Yeah.
the outcomes that the data is pointing to right now seem to be more of your competitive advantages coming from the corporation's relationships and the competitive advantage is coming from that relationship of trust of what you're saying, maybe leads into more resources coming from stakeholders, whether it be, consumer buying or corporate investment or what have you. But that reputation is and the relationships is really what's holding together that bridge, if you will. And it seems like it's based on trust, but that trust component is tough to build. I would imagine.
Yes.
Takes
And
time.
I guess it goes back to some of those management fads from like the 70s, where you have, the trust falls and team building activities where you go out and just do random things with with the folks you're trying to build trust with. And I feel like that's kind of where strategic collaboration is falling. It's like,
so
it helps you give the experience.
Is the trust fall for companies and companies, pretty much,
Yes.
right? Okay, all right.
Pretty much. And like they're not always 100% successful with it when they're not going into the process with, an open mind. So the folks who try it because everyone else is trying it, and then they fail because they got paired with some university and they just didn't realize that, like, oh, universities operate on a different timeline than corporations do. They don't have this urgency. That they're more likely to fail at trying to bring in other things.
Right.
But yeah, the reason folks are successful implementing these things isn't because the thing is awesome, but just because they already have. We had so many different names for this. I think our favorite ones are like, organizational agility, or I think my favorite one was from Mufti, and she had she found something called adhocracy, an organization that was just more willing to, like, not just stick to the book, but kind of make up the rules as things go on. So they were adaptable. If something changes, they'll say, oh, okay, well, our current process doesn't really handle this well. Let's just ad hoc make up another process to handle this special situation.
Well, you're definitely in an ever-changing and fluid field or sector that you're looking into with your research. So, best of luck to you with that.
Big disruptive innovation.
Yeah. Looks like we have to land this plane time-wise, but thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks, Ron. Appreciate it.
All right. Yeah, great reconnecting with you guys, and hoping to follow in your footsteps in a few short semesters.
Best of luck. So that brings us to our conclusion today. I'm Jason.
And I'm Josh. Thanks for joining us on J&J DBA Insights. Absorb the knowledge.